£200 out about a week ago, and I still got it. I still got a big wad of cash walking around. So I'm thinking, do you know what? It really does sort of make it go further, and in fact does have recruitment implications as well, because lots of companies are setting up offices here, obviously because of the cost arbitrages, the wage arbitrages is obvious. You can hire like five times the amount of human labor, so to say, of equivalent quality by putting them over this part of the world. So speak English very well, just a bit offset in terms of time zone, which you can probably get over, but very, very good. Yeah. Anyway, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail, even though today is going to be a different kind of time. I know it's like early in the day for a lot of us, 10 a.m. in the UK. Reason for this is because I am actually on the opposite side of the world. I'm in Malaysia right now. And so there's going to be a few like weirdly timed Brainfood Lives whilst I'm still in APAC, which is going to be a couple more months. So we'll be switching in between the time and the day, but also an interesting experiment for us to see whether actually we might get more people watching it in the morning than we do in the afternoon. Because Adam, I don't know whether you saw a viral post that someone posted. I think a couple of it was yesterday maybe, where geezer took a picture of an office in London Friday night, Friday 4 p.m. and it's dark in the UK obviously. And basically you can see loads of office space completely empty, and it was like, yeah, everyone's away Friday afternoon, clocking out 12 o'clock, you're out of there. So folks, quick question for you if you're listening to this: is this a better time for Brainfood Live? Should we shove it forward into the morning? You let me know. Before we kick off though, let's make sure that the audio and visual is okay. Standard stuff, folks. Can you hear me on Crowdcast? If you can, do let me know in the comments there. We should be blasting this out on everywhere on LinkedIn. I think loads of people have helped us broadcast this. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, do let me know whether the audio and visual is fine there as well. We can kick off from there. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Euan. Okay, yeah, actually, yeah, much better for in the morning, man. What do you reckon? We have to talk about it, Adam. Like, how does it suit you to do a Brainfood Live? Does it make a difference if we shove it
I'll turn up
10 or 11?
Any time of the day or night that you want to do it, I'm here.
Yeah, that's really reliable, man. I appreciate it, but I'm tempted, man, because I also feel a little bit, you know what I mean? Like not to say I'm gonna shut the weekend off early, but it feels like towards the end, like 3 p.m., 3:30, you want to just get off the call. So yeah, maybe early is better. Anyway, we'll run a poll on this and see how we're doing. Right. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Adam, Gordon, you haven't been on for a bit, I feel. But good to see you anyway. Nice new haircut as well. How's life? Life is good?
Yeah, life's good. I'm going on holiday on Sunday skiing for a week, and very much looking forward to that. I feel pretty much stressed out of my mind right now about work, but so I'm looking forward to going to the slopes.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing better than actually doing skiing because you can't be on the computer. I mean, that's one of the holidays where you literally cannot do it because you are all in trying to keep upright. So yeah, fantastic stuff. Okay, man,
My phone pretty much broke when I went to Morocco in October. It's never worked since. Like, it doesn't connect to the internet properly and stuff. So I'm not going to be able to do any work on that either. So like, I'm gonna switch off. That'll be good.
Yeah, just everyone needs to switch off, even entrepreneurs. So so that's very important. And to be honest with you, when we bring Euan and Woody on, they'll endorse that as well. They're very modern sort of founders of businesses. So maybe another thing to talk about. All right, listen, let's do a review of the newsletter real quick, man. Did you read it last week, mate? And if so, what was interesting for you?
Oh, loads of things were interesting, as always. So, I mean, the first one is, let's talk about the poll around AI agents. I've made a habit of talking about the poll the last few times that I've done this, actually. And I can't remember the exact wording on the poll that you gave, but it was like, what do you think about the future or what do you think about AI agents? And 51% of people said, yeah, this is real and we need to wake up. I'm not entirely sure what wake up means. I mean, there's not a lot that they need to actually do. Like, they're going to get put into talent acquisition by people that are like either in tech companies or in internal tech teams. So, I mean, it's coming. There's a load of things that we don't want to be doing anyway, to be honest. There are like the most boring stuff is going to get taken out of like human tasks. That is definitely what's going to happen. I was interested in the nearly 1 in 5 people who said they're real, but they're disappointing. I just don't believe that I don't believe those people have any experience to be able to say that they're disappointing. Who's used any AI agents in recruiting at this point? I think they're probably talking about like just using Copilot or something like that, but that's not an AI agent. So this is something we do need to talk about a little bit more. But it's really quite technical stuff. It's back of the system stuff that we'll just notice an improvement in the way that technology works for us. That's what's going to happen. It's not like switching on a browser extension or using a new Boolean solution or something like that. It's just something that's going to come into our world, and it's going to make the technology perform better for us.
Yeah, I think so. I think most people are just going to get sort of AI agents rolled into us, whether we like it or not. And in fact, there should be some interesting updates coming shortly on Brainfood Live, incidentally, where we've somehow got some major attention from some of the biggest players in the recruitment tech industry that are going to come on and talk about what their plans are in terms of AI agents. So watch this space, folks. I should be able to announce that a bit more publicly in a bit. But I personally am quite surprised that they paid attention to doing here on Brainfood Live, but it does seem to be happening. So anyway, yeah, AI agents, we're going to do that show next week. So make sure you tune in for that. We're going to get some demos in. So there's one of the things that we're going to try and do is to get people to show and tell. Okay, you think you're using an AI agent? Let's have a look. There's a few people that are very strong in evangelizing for this, so there's a little bit of a test for them. But let's go on and bring them on. They're technically very, very adroit though. So people like Johannes Sundlo is going to come on. We've got Jose Cadlets. He's going to come on to show us what he's been up to as well. I'm hoping Glenn Cathy might join. So we've got a lot of people that basically are as leading edge as they can be to our industry. They're gonna show us basically where we're at. Anyway,
hopefully I've got something to demo as well. Hopefully I can join.
I'm not sure you're in it, mate, because you're on holiday. Anyway, this is what I assumed, right? Next week, next Friday.
Oh, is it next week? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're away. So I've got Jessie Chauffeur on it, and she's significant upgrade on you, mate. So so you're gonna have to shuffle off on that one. Anyway, by the way, I'm getting loads of feedback to say, yeah, morning's better. Like maybe we have to shift it, man. But yeah, I'm just thinking again for people with parents, parents and kids and stuff, it may well be better. All right, let's move on. Give us a couple things that were interesting, mate.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you mentioned Glenn Cathy. He tested DeepSeek R1 in terms of its output for Boolean strings on forklift truck drivers, I think it was. And the summary was that, like, the output was strong. It was actually surprisingly strong. He was surprised at the ability to use logic. He said it wasn't perfect. It kind of highlighted the requirement for really quite complex thinking when it comes to doing inclusive searches. And so I found it really interesting. I think large language models in general, like they're becoming, it's electricity. It's electricity in your car. It's oil in your car. I really believe that DeepSeek's been excellent because it's forced quicker deployment of new innovations from OpenAI and others into the market, and
it's forced the price down. Yeah, it's forced the price down straight away. Like OpenAI, exactly. And I think only today OpenAI said, "Hey, listen, we're going to increase the limits on all of the tiers," and it's just basically so more competition, better open source. I'm a big evangelist of. I think that's the way forward for it. But anyway, Glenn's post is amazing. His posting is amazing. Do follow Glenn Cathy. I'm on a bit of a Glenn Cathy kind of sort of evangelization right now. Wonderful to see him post again. He's always been a hero in recruitment, but he's back on. He's posting daily some amazing content. So go follow him if you want to get smarter about recruitment. Okay, give us one more, mate, before we bring on the two Willo lads.
Well, let's talk about making prisoners work for a living. Like El Salvador's president has very proudly announced that a very large number, 40% or something, of prisoners are now like non-violent prisoners. So it's not available to rapists and murderers, but they're now learning skills that's going to help them be rehabilitated into society, reducing the burden on the prison system. The word is recidivism, which comes from Latin, and it means like reoffending effectively and ending up back in jail, whatever. I'm all for it. I think anybody that has to go to jail should be made to work, personally. And I know that that's slightly controversial, but like, tough shit. You can't just sit and have a holiday. You've got to do it.
Right, folks, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Should prisoners basically be forced to work? I mean, one of the things I would say is that maybe you should give people the offer to do so, because Nayib Bukele, I think he's obviously been one of these new generation presidents. He's manifestly been successful in reducing crime, like violent crime on the streets of El Salvador. So you've got to give him massive credit for that. But he's also encountered he's made some brutal rules, kind of like Singaporean style, like just sweeping up anybody with a gang tattoo, whether you've committed a crime or not. The fact that you're affiliated with the gang is itself now a crime, and off you go into prison. And then, right, we're going to try and basically force you into working into the economy in order to, upskill, reskill, and reconnect you to the legal economy. So positive take on this is that, listen, it does reduce recidivism, and it makes sure that, you're not going to get a gang culture re-emerge on the streets when people let go. The negative view is, of course, is this not forced labor? I mean, is this problematic? But anyway, I put it within the post itself. I think it's very difficult to figure this out. It comes into the different nuances. The UK has a lot of positive stuff going on with regards to trying to get sort of people who are formerly incarcerated back into work. James Timpson, in fact, very famously, if you've ever been to a Timpson's, which is a cobbler, they've made a commitment really early on. 10% of their entire employee workforce has to be someone who's basically been in prison. And that's done a great job in getting people back into work and, all the rest of it. So all well and good, but very careful how you do play it, because obviously it can be exploitative. I mean, you look at the US, for instance, I didn't realize until recently, but the firefighters that are off there fighting fires and putting their lives on the line in Los Angeles, something like 60% of those are actually prisoners. And they have to go and do this, obviously for some sort of reward, but at the same time, it's like, what? There's lots of ways in which this can be abused. All right, cool. Let's get on with it.
Just one quick thing. Like I'm in danger of getting cancelled for this, but I'm just going to say it. There's too many people making a lifestyle choice not to work, and I know it's different in different places and whatever, but like honestly, in parts of Scotland, there's people that are third generation unemployed and have and they think they're too good to work in Tesco, and it's just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. So you either work in freedom or you work with no freedom.
I'm going to cancel you now, Adam, booting you off. Off you go. No, but the truth is that I think the moment, hopefully, if cancellation is disappearing and we can actually start speaking a bit more frankly on certain things, I think it's important we do, because the failure to do that actually has opened the space for, essentially bellends to take over that conversation, which I think is deeply unfortunate. So yeah, we need to speak more frankly with humanity and with empathy, which is what is currently lacking in a lot of the more vocal people out there. All right, let's bring on Euan and Woody. We're going to talk through this this report. They did this last year, and it was really fascinating. So I want to really support companies that are doing this type of work. I think it's really interesting to just share that information and see how we're going. Let me bring on Woody here as well. Woody with the magnificent hair. They compliment Woody's hairstyle today. It's incredible. It really is. So yeah, just a bit of a kind of preamble before the two guys come on. In fact, no, they're here anyway, so maybe we can just get them to say it. There he is. Is that the hair's magnificent? Come on,
it's terrible.
The volume.
Buffon.
How does that man get that type of volume? We need product advice. All right, folks. Let's do some quick intros. I think you should know these two already, but for the folks who don't know you, why don't we do some intros? Woody, you go first. Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. I am Woody, co-founder and chief customer officer at Willo. So what I do day to day is basically speak to all of our biggest customers and our partners and deliver best-in-class tech solutions for candidate screening. That's basically what I do. I'll let you and maybe you want to do a Willo intro.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks. Good afternoon, Han. Yeah, so Euan, co-founder here at Willo as well, CEO and co-founder. And Willo, if you don't know, is a video screening platform. We launched in 2020, and we are essentially making interviewing and screening enjoyable for candidates and enjoyable and fun for employers to use as well. We work across SME, mid-market, and enterprise now. We have customers from freelancers and cafes on street corners, all the way up to some of the largest employers in the world, including PwC, Amazon, Randstad, etc.
Fantastic stuff. And it's willow.video, I believe, is still the
That's right.
domain, isn't it? But very unique sort of domain. So Willo, so WILLO.video. Check it out. If you haven't got some sort of solution that helps your recruiters, recruit at higher volume and at high quality, Willo.video is a tool you should check out. Okay, let's put some context onto the report because you guys did this last year. We're really impressed with it. We brought you on to discuss it. Can you give us again sort of a recap as to why you're doing this type of report and why what's prompted you to do it, and and then we'll get into it and do some screen shares and see where we're at.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, so we started this report last year, and the purpose of the hiring trends report last year was to essentially not only help us, because it's really interesting to know where the industry is going, but also help all of you understand where the industry is going, so that you can upskill, you can plan for what's coming. And essentially, we did it last year. We asked over 100 senior TA execs across the industry. So we asked them at the end of 2023 what they were expecting to happen in 2024, what their predictions were for the year ahead. And we collated all of that information. We did it in a very scientific way. We spent hours and hours actually building the research. And we came out with some really interesting findings. Primary finding from last year was that there was a expected rise in the use of AI, which we all know. We obviously then did it again for 2025 to recalibrate and see what actually happened in 2024. Were the predictions true? And then what do we expect to see in 2025? And it's been really interesting to do these. It's not an easy task by any means. It's a serious undertaking to actually do a piece of research that can stand on its own 2 feet and be credible. And we've produced another one this year, which is available free for anyone to download. And we'll share a link in the comments here. But yeah, it's been a really interesting piece of work to do, not only for us as a business, so we know where the company and where the industry is going, but also for everyone else to see where things are going.
Fantastic. And it's basically free for everyone to review. So we'll share that link to everyone who, if you haven't already got it, but somebody ping it. Oh, thanks, Woody. He's pinged it into the chat on Crowdcast there. Someone pick that up and stick it into the LinkedIn as well. So who was watching it on my LinkedIn feed, I think a couple hundred people there. So give them a view of it as well. Okay. I love the fact that you did a review of what the TA folks said the year previous. How far off were they, Euan? Were they like miles away from what they expected to happen? What was their prediction quality like?
The one that really stood out for me, it's a great point. We actually did another piece end of last year, just what actually happened in the year. We can share that on LinkedIn as well. But the piece that stood out most to me anyway, as I was reading it, was that although there was a big expectation that AI was going to be used in our screening and in our selection processes, the reality didn't necessarily become true. Not as many people, about 15% less people, actually used AI in their hiring processes. A lot of reasons for that. I'm sure you guys have got your own opinions as to why that happened. What we saw was just that there wasn't necessarily the resources available or not just in terms of budgets and things, but in terms of knowledge and time to actually implement AI tools into the hiring processes.
Yeah, really interesting. I think that's definitely been a pattern as well. Like everyone has theoretically committed, but actually when it comes to implementing something from an existing system that you've worked hard to optimize, it's quite hard. There's a switching cost to that. Even if it is, which is why I think the use of AI has generally been at the very, trivial end of it. Message composition, drafting something as a document. Everyone's give that a go, but it's pretty surface level in terms of how it's not like re-engineering your operating sort of approach. That's turned into a much more difficult thing. And it's probably going to be reliant on you guys to basically produce the products to do it. I don't think the individual experimentation itself was going to evolve into something that's sustainable over a larger business. It's going to need the vendors to basically be able to say, right, here's the segment where we're going to solve it, and then off you go. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at the report, guys. I don't know how we want to do it, but if you got it up there, let's share screen and we'll have a look and we'll run through it.
Yeah, let's try this. We did this last time and it did work. Let me just figure out how we do it again.
Do you want me to try, Euan?
Let's see. Yeah, you should try because I can't get it to. Do you want to? Yeah, go for it, Woody. Go ahead.
It was in the middle of doing it there.
That's it. That's what I was looking for. Perfect.
It has happened. There we go. Cool. Let's increase the size of this.
Yeah, if you zoom in.
Yeah, folks, you should be able to zoom in on this. If you just hover on the top of the window, you can just bounce this to a larger size. I'm going to do this as well. Pin it this way. Full screen image. Okay, go ahead, guys.
Oh, cool. Got to hide the sidebar as well, Woody, if we can. Yeah. I don't know how we do it.
I don't know how you do that. You've gone beyond my technical capability as a customer individual, sadly. So you might just have to live with the sidebar, I'm afraid.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Can people see this? Comment if you can't. I can probably make it a bit bigger.
Let's jump down to the key insights section anyway. So that is the first interesting section here. Let's jump there. Some really interesting findings here.
All right, I think massive bold font. We love it. Go ahead.
The interesting part. So I was going to say this, but I knew that we'd end up here after what Euan said about last year and the trends from last year. This bit I find absolutely fascinating. So of the people that managed to put in AI last year, 53% of them are going to add, change, or cancel what they put in. And I think that really speaks to the fact that it was very, very new last year. People really didn't know what good usage of AI within their talent process looked like. And my opinion of that is people got a top-down push to implement AI. They implemented something quickly that potentially hasn't delivered what they wanted to and on their objectives. So actually they're looking, to this year to go, okay, well, last year was kind of a test. Now we want to aggressively add, change, or move to different AI tools. So I think this year is going to be the year we're going to see it really take off and get implemented, but in a more conscious way, personally. So I think that's a super stat that I didn't expect to see, to be honest.
I want to know what the other 47% are doing.
Well, they must be happy.
That's absolute nonsense. I mean, I'm not saying your survey is nonsense, but 47% are not planning to do anything with AI this year.
Well, they're not planning. No. So the question is whether they were looking to change what they had implemented with AI. So it's not whether they're doing anything. It's whether they're adding more to their current AI stack. So the 47% of people in that would have some AI within their process already.
But what that means is that 47% of people are not planning to do anything different with AI in 2025. Right. I would question their sanity because things have very, very considerably moved on since 2024.
Yeah.
That's true, but it's sorry, guys. It may be true, but just as a way of explaining that, it may well be that the 47% have implemented something that they're happy to stick with, because the innovation rate has been occurring within those tools as well. I mean, every tool has evolved sort of tremendously in this period. One of the things I think is true is that technology is the rate of change, the feature release sort of cycles, that it's just accelerating faster and faster. So it's almost like you're getting a different product every 3 months. So simply because the AI has basically enabled software development to really just shoot through the roof. But yeah, it's interesting I think the central point stands that the majority of the people that did something last year may not be satisfied with what they experimented with. So it could well be that the options have improved in the wider market, so they're able to choose between better stuff. So really interesting stuff. What other highlights can you pick out, Woody? This is quite interesting.
Yeah, this one is very interesting to me as well. So around the fact that 17% of people are actually going to make final hiring decisions using AI. I anticipated that to actually be a lot higher, to the detriment of candidates, personally. And the way I see this year is really aggressive implementation of AI, the difficulty of the balance between candidates using AI and recruiters using AI, and us ending up with AI just assessing AI. And then at the back end, you have a short list of candidates where they all turn up for their interview and you've got to spend more time with them, more laborious skills-based assessments to actually figure out if they've got the skills that they said they had earlier. So I actually thought that number would be a little bit higher, to be honest. I'd welcome anybody else's opinion. I assumed more companies would be implementing more AI to make final decisions, especially in really high volume, potentially low skill roles where it's a case of a few knockout questions, competency, right to work, that kind of stuff, and then get them in as soon as possible.
I think that's because maybe it's an unwelcome thing to say for TA people. So I wonder whether that is kind of a disapproved sort of thing to say, that we're going to use AI to make those final decisions. I do think it probably is a bit higher, particularly for high volume. And what does it actually mean when you're saying we're going to help it make decisions? Like, is it endorsing people? Is it directly saying we're definitely hiring A, B, C and not X, Y, Z? Maybe we need a bit more nuance on how that question is framed. But I suspect that number is currently higher and probably will continue to get higher, because AI may in fact be being able to produce a more accurate decision. You can imagine in future that the ability of a human to veto some of these recommendations will decline, simply because it carries a higher risk to do that. But yeah, I welcome anybody others' views on that in terms of that number and whether it's surprising or not. 17% directly using AI to support hiring.
Anybody using a modern applicant tracking system, a best of breed applicant tracking system, will have some form of AI powered matching that's happening, which is why I agree with Woody and with Euan that I'm surprised that number's not a bit higher.
I agree. I think there's something interesting here, though, which we're seeing, I suppose, when we're speaking to customers, is that because a lot of the large corporates aren't comfortable yet using AI in their organizations, not all of the large organizations that you're speaking about, Adam, that use ATSs are actually using the AI features. A lot of them have to turn them off because they aren't comfortable yet with how they can be used. I think we're going to see that continuing in 2025. There's still a lot of noise around the ethics of using AI, obviously, and particularly in Europe with a lot of the new legislation coming in. I don't know whether there's actually there's a nervousness around the implementation or even just the switching on of AI to make a lot of these decisions. Hence why that might be lower.
Does anyone know what the UK position is on this? Because obviously we're out of the EU. We're not sort of adopting the EU AI Act, as far as I know. Like, are we though? Like, what is the current state of play? Does anyone know?
So they released their sort of guidelines, updated ethical use of AI guidelines last year, right? But they're just guidelines at the moment. I don't know how that is progressing. I would love to know more. But they were around making sure that things are still human centric and not over indexing, and looking at your data sets and really understanding the AI tool before implementing it to avoid any sort of adverse impact. That was the guidance, but as I say, it's not really a compliance thing. Not like what we're seeing in New York, for example, where actual legislation is coming in and stopping companies from even transcribing and summarizing candidate responses, for fear that the AI is going to give some sort of intel that's not correct. I think, and the thing that we're not really talking about on the other side that much is the candidate side of use of AI in this report, and how that's going to impact the implementation of all of these things. Because at the moment, candidates are, everybody says AI enabled, I call them AI disabled, because what's happening is candidates are going into these application forms using AI and ending up looking exactly the same as everybody else, as opposed to enhancing their actual skills and capabilities. And all that I'm hearing every single day is customers going, well, we're in this massive, as everybody's calling it, the sea of sameness. And the problem is we need to automate that sea of sameness down to something that's actually meaningful. So I'm intrigued to see how that drives the hiring decision debate, use of AI in the future, because I don't think you can make a hiring decision based on something that's just been generated at the moment by ChatGPT, basically.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The AI versus AI, I think we're already here. It was a theoretical conversation maybe 18 months or so ago, but this is the reality of 2005 in recruiting. Like, if you're advertising a job and you're not using some sort of artificial intelligence, I think you're taking a huge risk, because you're going to just be nuking your inbox. I mean, how else are you going to handle it? Bear in mind, there's two things here: ubiquitous use of artificial intelligence. A lot of these tools are very simple to make. A lot of them are free to use. And we're dealing with like a global marketplace of highly literate, digitally literate, AI literate candidates that can suddenly apply to 1,000 jobs in a couple of clicks. So I don't see how else you can deal with it unless you decide, A, you don't advertise at all and you find alternative non-public ways to source. So I think that's going to be a growth area. There's even been some indication that recruitment agencies are getting a little bit of an uplift of job requisitions getting pushed back to them, because sort of the internal recruiters can't post the job. Previously posting a job was one way to get your candidates cheaply. Nowadays, you get snowed under and you can't deal with it. Don't have time to source. You push it back out to the third-party recruiter again. So in a really interesting way, we might find sort of recruitment agencies benefiting from this AI arms race between candidates and employers, which I thought, something certainly I didn't anticipate to ever see. But yeah. I do think that's going to be a positive thing for recruitment agencies.
That's very interesting indeed. I hadn't anticipated that as well, but the way you just described that, it does make a bit of logic. And I notice in here, like, there's people saying 50, no, where is it? An increase in the proportion of people saying AI should not be used in hiring. And I think to myself, well, gosh, if employers are deciding they don't want to use it, and candidates are using it, they're certainly getting snowed with the amount of responses they've got to go through. And if Euan's right, like a lot of them are not switching on the AI matching and that type of thing, then that's just a burden that is going to be very difficult to deal with. But I also wanted to quickly highlight something that I think is an interesting paradox in here, which is the 48% decrease in companies planning significant hiring, yet there's a 58% uplift in positive outlook. So that seems kind of very much at odds with each other.
Yeah, I think to me, that feels a bit like teams last year were getting hammered and smaller and smaller and smaller, and therefore jobs were getting more and more stressful. And actually, this year, a reduction in the number of roles to fill with the team that you've currently got probably feels like a good thing. That would be my read on that situation, I guess.
Could be the right logic, yeah.
It could also be sort of the implementation of a technology has in fact improved efficiency. I mean, that's been the pressure for the last couple of years. We can imagine that some companies have succeeded in becoming more efficient, quote unquote, obviously means, you know, more work per capita, per human, so to say. So it kind of makes sense in that regard. You know, less sort of hiring, more output. That's probably what the CEOs are looking for. Yeah. So it's a paradox in one way, but it also makes sense in another.
Yeah, we're absolutely seeing that as well. You'll see that in the report if we continue further down. The survey found that this year we're expecting compensation to increase, but the size of teams not to increase. And if you look at that, that's obviously correlated to the fact that organizations are broadly more productive than they were maybe last year, higher outputs, more profitability, and they can obviously then pay some of that profit back to the teams that they already have.
Where was that report in terms of pay? Here we go. That chart there. So run that back to me again, Euan. You're saying that there's an expectation that team size will not increase, but pay will. So essentially, either the same size of pie or maybe slightly larger pie.
Yeah. So organizations are expecting salary and compensation to become more of a challenge this year, as in more competitive this year, as more firms look to pay more to their staff, which is a really interesting finding. So that correlates with what we saw over the course of last year as well. Obviously, there was a scaling back in certain teams, but those teams became more productive. They got more skills, they got more technology, and the team, the company is now generally more profitable and producing more with the same number of people, or in some cases less people. But there is an opportunity now to pay your staff more to retain them, because that's a real push. We've obviously seen that over the past few years, to push towards profitability across the board.
And to be clear,
there's a great example.
Yeah, to be clear, Euan, the people who are responding to this are referring to their own department. So we're talking about TA functions. Is that correct?
No, they're talking about their organization generally.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, here's a good example.
Do you think companies are looking for people that can? We've talked about talent density, and we've talked about we've talked about in talent acquisition. We've talked about like the robot-proof recruiter and stuff like that. Do we think that this is a survival of the fittest thing, and it's really just the kind of people that can do 20 different things who are actually going to end up employed, and therefore they're going to be on big salaries, because the competition to hire people that can do 5 jobs is that part of it?
Do you think maybe the answer to that question is it's actually candidates that can utilize AI most effectively to deliver on 5 jobs? I actually...
So yes, in a different way, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like in my mind, one of the key competencies or skills that TA leaders should be implementing into their score sheets is, how does this candidate utilize AI efficiently and effectively to deliver on their job? And I don't see that on any scorecards, on any interview scorecards. And I think if you, as an individual, you can augment the use of AI, you can absolutely demand a higher salary because you can deliver more, right? And if you compared that to the, like you say, 5 people that you would have to hire without having somebody that is a skilled prompt engineer, they're still going to be paying a lot less.
I mean, I think this is fine because, back in the day, I remember a few years ago, Microsoft hired a whole bunch of real expert talent sourcers who are Boolean black belts and internet researchers, and these people were getting paid 3 times more than a typical talent sourcer was getting paid, because they could just do so much. So I think if we apply that to use of other technologies, for example, yeah, fine, it's good, it's natural.
Yep, I agree with it. I think ultimately it's on everyone's responsibility to become AI enabled. It's not like something that you can casually, leave to others. Even though I've referred to the fact that probably most of us will encounter artificial intelligence through the tools that we use. Vendors like you guys are going to roll it out to us, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you can just relax. You've got to be all over it in terms of what the potential is, the use cases. There's lots of different sort of ways in which artificial intelligence is kind of seeping into every aspect of the talent acquisition role. And yeah, I can't imagine a situation where if you're hiring for someone from scratch to your team today, like, are you not interested in their own, in that person's fluency? With artificial intelligence, it's no different from hiring someone who's digitally sort of literate in 2000s or so. You're looking for someone who knows how the new way of working is going to actually going to transpire. So cool. Okay, Euan, you
can't stop them from using it. So best to embrace it and understand it.
Okay,
definitely.
Keep going, guys.
Keep going.
What we're looking at here.
We've kind of talked about that bit already.
Yeah. Let's jump down to some 2025. Here we go. So this is an interesting take here. So I guess one thing that we haven't spoken about a huge amount, but I love what you just mentioned earlier, Hung, was the potential reality that recruiters, as in recruitment agencies, benefit from the increase in volume that we're seeing. That's a really interesting take, which I've not heard a huge amount on yet. And what we haven't spoken about, but there is some findings in the report, is that job boards have a lot to answer for in that. The job boards have made it actually just easier to apply. Regardless of AI, if we take AI out of the picture, it's still easier today than it was 5 years ago to apply en masse to jobs. The button is just there. You can multi-select, you can hit apply, and it just goes out to all of those applications. That's obviously a change which the job boards have initiated over the past few years. That's having an impact on the volume, but that's also having an impact on the quality. And the quality of the applications is dropping, because easy apply and mass apply doesn't necessarily mean quality. If you do mass apply plus AI, you might get a higher quality, but mass apply without AI is just volume and noise. And
well, you
that's
might
not going to change anytime
get a
soon.
higher seeming quality, not necessarily quality. I think
Yeah.
so AI mass apply is an additional issue, but you're absolutely correct. Even before AI emerged, there was this massive push, and we were all part of it. I wouldn't only just blame the job boards. I think the entire recruitment industry was saying, "Hey, you got to make it easier for candidates to apply." If you recall, this is pre-COVID maybe, but we were in a situation where there was a candidate shortage. Everyone was struggling to hire. So look, you got to just reduce the friction on this. But we've reduced the friction so much that basically anyone can blast out like 100 applications on a few clicks, and that's obviously no bueno. The level of friction isn't correct. So yeah, this is why assessment comes in and increase that friction.
Yeah, exactly. That's really that key takeaway there. 25% is really expecting an increase in those assessment methods, but AI proof assessment methods. And that's obviously, it's exciting for Willo, because what we do is AI resistant in a number of ways. You can't go on video and be answering questions proactively as a human being with the use of AI. So there's a really interesting take there, that obviously we have volume on one hand, AI enabled or not, there's still volume. And then on the other hand, we have this desire and this increase in 2025 to actually introduce AI assistant high volume screening methods. And we're seeing that obviously people are speaking to us every day going, hey, we've got huge volume problems. How do we get to the best candidates as quickly and easily as possible? And it's great to see that that's on their mind, but it's also not surprising, because we've, like you said, almost created that problem over the last few years, where volume has become an indicator of success.
Euan, have you come across the issue where candidates are doing a video interview, whether it's live or it's asynchronous, and they're getting their questions, and they've got their chatbot sitting here, which is giving them the answer to the question, and they're talking fluently back to the individual, reading what their chatbot's telling them to say is the answer.
Absolutely. So there's two things there. First of all, you can't necessarily do that in browser. So we have certain steps and things. There's anti-cheat measures that stop it in browser, but you could have your phone, for example, here next to your computer, and you could read off a script. You could read off the page. You could read off what the bot's telling you. But on the other hand, if you do that, it's pretty obvious to the person watching the videos back. It's obvious when somebody's reading. So there's, and that's obviously going to be the case whether it's a live interview or not. If you're on a Zoom or a Teams call, it's the same. It's pretty obvious when it's a script. And I'm speaking from personal experience plus speaking to customers that they know straight away. And that's always going to be the case, whether that's a phone call or a video call. If somebody's reading from an AI generated piece of script, you will know. And if you don't know, then you probably need to work on your ability to detect that, because it's pretty obvious.
Do you flag that up, Euan? No, hang on. Just a quick one. Do you guys flag this up? Like, are you getting into the? Are you thinking of it in terms of the product, where you're saying, right, we're going to try and flag up what is a suspicious response, or do you think that's going too far and it's actually up to the human reviewer to do that? Like, where's your position policy-wise on this?
Definitely up to the human reviewer, Hung. That's a great question. So we do certain things which just mitigate the ability to cheat. You know, for example, you can't have multiple tabs open and you can't read from other tabs. You can't, inject like a virtual camera, all that kind of stuff. But then, yeah, when it comes to actually detecting whether they're reading, it's really up to the individual, because again, everyone is different. Some people actually don't mind so much if somebody's reading from a script, because it's not that important. And actually they might like the initiative that the candidate took to actually read from a script. Everyone's different. And we find that, like, it's obviously, we're fortunate we have a global customer base, and globally there's differences too. You have cultural differences. There's different requirements for different jobs. So we allow and we're really giving that responsibility to the end user.
I think that also this comes back to, like, for me, one of the biggest things that TEA has to do this year is help educate candidates around what AI is going to help them get a job and what isn't. Because if you are just reading a script that ChatGPT has written for you, you are going to sound like every other person that did that, and you're not going to get through an interview process. So there's a responsibility as an employer to educate those candidates and say, hey, look, I know that this is what you think is going to get you the job, but in reality, we can see straight through it, number one, and you're saying exactly the same things as everybody else. So you need to utilize it in a different way. And it's no different to, if John Lewis released their questions in advance, I could spend days writing a script from Google back in the day. It's just a lot quicker, right? And the reality is that you need to, as a candidate, utilize it to go, hey, these are the 4 points that I would probably focus on. What's wrong with that? Nothing. But reading a verbatim script, you're going to be looking at the side, saying exactly the same things as everybody else. So yeah. And like, my ideal solution is a candidate goes, right, these are the things I'm good at. These are the qualifications I've got. This is the question. Now just help me surface what I should be saying. And what's wrong with that? In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. That is good use of AI.
I think there's the interesting paradox, and I think Euan covered it, the interesting paradox of, like, having anti-cheat measures, but also potentially wanting to hire AI-enabled candidates. There's an interesting irony in that. But the other thing I think we need to think about on this is, like, the issue around quality of hire versus volume. So if we're hiring 100 people and they all need to be good enough, does it matter that they're reading from a script? It probably doesn't. But if we're hiring one really critical hire, who's going to make decisions on the fly, like, all day, non-stop,
absolutely,
that's a different thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, and it kind of comes back to the point I made where, like, where we're at in candidate screening, you just need to know if the candidate is worth investing more time in or not. It's not a yes, no. It's not that linear. Yes, you can be a rejected candidate, but you're not hired off the back of candidate screening. What you're hired off the back of should then be a more in-depth understanding of, can this person actually deliver on their role, and that is, performing a 30-minute task when they come in for the interview, for example. So there's how do we get the right people in the room, guide the candidates to ensure they are individual, and then how do we in depth understand, okay, this person can actually deliver what we need them to.
That's a really good point, Woody. I just want to underline that, like, basically the signal that we're getting from this screening, and Willo probably amongst sort of all of those products that are in that sort of space in between the advert and inbox, let's say, you're not going to necessarily it's not decisive at that point. You're just trying to figure out, is it worth that employer investing more time with the candidates? Some are going to be obvious no's. That's great. Move them away. But the ones that are, above that bar, that you can go and then do a secondary interview with them, or whatever the second thing may be. Okay, cool. Let's track through, guys.
We talked a lot about AI. Shock. We probably covered most of this stuff, to be honest. Euan, was there anything else, any other pages you thought were worth?
While you're jumping about here, I have a quick shout out as well. The first 10 people that follow our LinkedIn page will receive our latest swag. I'm just going to put our LinkedIn page in the comments while we navigate around the report here. But first 10 people to follow our page will get some nice, shiny new 2025 Willo swag coming through their
get following,
through
folks.
their door.
That's like free stuff. This is 2025, folks.
This is
you get any free stuff, you go grab it.
Such good swag going. To be fair, I am the swag king for Willo. This digs into
straight in.
Nice, well done, Christian. You're in. This delves into a little more detail around what we mean by people adding AI tools, Adam, to your question. So yeah, not that many are getting rid of it altogether. It's mainly enhancing, and then 27% of people not using AI tools at all, which again, I think is, I don't believe that stat, because I don't believe that a recruiter.
I do. Do you know what I do? Because I think you'd be very surprised as to how many people are just very, very, they're just not even on there. It's not in. I went to a conference late last year in the US, and there was a person that didn't know what an ATS was. They were still managing everything through the inbox alone. It was like we're trying to figure out, okay, how are you managing this? Even the question was a mystery, because it was all just literally done by emails. I thought, what?
Yeah.
So there's huge variety in terms of where people are at with technology, and it goes down to the basics there. I see a map down there, guys. So I assume you've done a survey that was a global survey. Can you give us a bit of a view as to sort of where? Are there any regional differences in terms of usage of AI, or particular things that they've talked about in terms of anticipating for 2025? Was there anything you'd like to that we could sort of generalize on?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I can give a generalization. If we go right to left, the use of AI across the customer base is higher on the right than it is on the left. So Asia, Southeast, Pacific region, it's really quite prevalent, and there's great uses of AI that we're hearing and seeing. Then as we go to Europe, it's a little bit less, and then we go to the US, it's a little bit less as well. And a lot of that, I believe, though, Hung, is down to the nervousness around legislation, compliance, regulation, and the noise that's in that space at the moment. Like I said, particularly with the larger organizations we work with, they just haven't come to a decision yet as to how AI can be used in their organization. So rather than sort of toe the line, they just say, no, not right now for us. And they don't use the AI features. Whereas we're definitely seeing there's a lot more use of it in Australia even, which is a great example use case where Australia is quite open to uses of AI technology, which is great. And then Asia Pacific in general, more use of AI, which is really interesting to see and great to see as well.
Huge use in India as a market. Every single call I have with a customer in India is actually, they're almost trying to automate end to end, really aggressive use of AI. And that's, a lot of that is down to hiring and application volumes for sure.
Yep.
In that market, but they're just like we can't deliver on what we need to deliver without it. So it better be in the product.
It's fascinating to see as well, because it's really smart. They're applying real, logic and science a lot of the time to build these processes out. I'm seeing that a lot in Australia as well, though. Australia is a fascinating market for that, where the thought that goes into some of these hiring processes is pretty fascinating. And the ability to rip up the existing hiring process and actually implement a new one that's AI enabled.
Well, hang on. Let's talk about that. I mean, can you give us an example? Obviously, don't share any names of companies and stuff, but can you give me an example of a re-engineered system that you've heard of, or a customer that you've dealt with?
Yeah, there's loads. I'm trying to think. The best ones are probably the ones where they don't start with the resume or the CV, so they're going straight into answer a number of questions or complete this test for us or introduce yourself on video. That's a genius way to get candidates into the pipeline. You're removing that step. But then how do you deal with the volume? You then go into an AI screened version of that assessment. So it might be, we're looking for this answer, and this answer. So if they don't say this, and this, or they don't meet that requirement, then they're moved into this bucket or this flow. They're sent this email automatically. There's so many examples. I won't give any specific ones, but they all generally follow that same process of what are we actually trying to achieve here? What's not working today? And then how do we build it? And a lot of the interesting customers that I hear from, they're using multiple tools. So the tech stack is becoming a lot more complex. They might be using, for example, like Jotform or Typeform, Willo, and then Arctic Shores or Assess First or something, and they're connecting it all together and then pushing that into their ATS and then getting a decision at the end. And those are the kind of companies which I think are really interesting to follow, because they're experimenting, but they are going to be defining what everyone else eventually does.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the flow of assessment, typically they're doing hard logistical questions, knockout questions, soft skills assessment at scale, and then hard skills assessment in depth. So they're typically trying to get rid of as many people as possible that just can't do the job because they're in the wrong location or whatever it may be. They don't have the right to work, etc.
Yeah.
They're then going, okay, well, what are the soft skills of this individual? What psychometric profile do they have? What's the baseline potential? And then they're going, okay, well, now I need to do a coding test to really understand their in-depth hard skills. And that's just typically the kind of cascade down that they're having, one way or another.
And what's cool as well is that they're switching that on, and that just runs 24/7. That's what's quite fascinating as well about these companies. Like once it's built, it's just go, and it just operates. And obviously that works amazingly when you're talking about global remote hiring in particular.
Well, that's a kind of an interesting future, isn't it? So you're stopping from this campaign type mentality where you're campaigning per job. Previously, that was what we were doing. We're like, oh, where's our recruiting strategy? You've got to start from scratch every single role. It's like a massively painful exercise to even launch it. But you've got an always-on system that basically can handle infinite scale of candidates. If you have this automated system, and obviously we need to talk in sort of maybe we have to find another conversation about where the human touch needs to be through all of this. But if you create a highly automated system, you could absorb any volume of applications and still have a process, which means you've got to keep those things available, so you can keep that kind of job open all the time and then be constantly available to recruit those folks. Very, very interesting indeed. Folks, that may be something we talk about at another show. Like, how do you create a sort of highly automated way of working? Maybe that's a show we should do together, actually, Euan, where perhaps you could tap up one of your customers or one of those businesses that have actually done this and they're prepared to share their technique. Then I think that would be a very interesting thing to try and even present to folks to say, hey, listen, this is what it might look like if you were to go on a highly automated type of route. Okay, cool. Well, listen, I think this is the time's up for us, folks. We might need to stop sharing the screen as well. I don't know whether Woody, you want to try and do that, but
I have stopped sharing the screen, but I've clearly broken it.
You have indeed. No worries. We've got you back in some fashion here, so that's all good. It's probably something to do with me, but we'll just stay at Woody for the time being. Okay, folks, that's about it. I think really interesting to follow that conversation, guys. Thanks so much for putting it together. I know that for a company that is, still, fairly light footprint yourselves, to put together a bit of research like this is not an insignificant task. So thank you on behalf of the community for doing it. I'll make sure that people have access to the report. I think it's free to access, I understand. So everyone can take, I'll send an email where everyone can have a view of that PDF. And then we'll see what else we can do going forward. Sounds like a really interesting sort of thing to explore and lots to ruminate over. That's about it, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks again for Woody and for Euan for joining us. And we'll let you go at this point. Everyone else, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your time. And also for your feedback in terms of when we should be doing Brainfood Lives. I think that there is a good chance we move it to a different sort of time, particularly if there's like a general sense that we want to try and do this earlier in the day on Friday. So I'm getting to the feeling that maybe we do it 10 or 11 similar time to this. So I'll run a poll on this and see whether we're up for it. Okay, that's about it, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. We are going to be talking about AI again. This time it's AI agents. What is an AI agent? How does it apply to TA and HR? We're back on Friday. I don't think it's at 10 o'clock. It's at 11 a.m. Similar type of time frame. But 11 a.m. in the morning next week on Friday. I'll see you then, folks.